It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today I want to come to you guys about arena teams and counters. A lot of people I've been seeing have been commenting, how do they build for PVE teams? How do they make for counters against the other arena teams that are going through? And I'll start with the environmental teams. When it comes to the environment, the main thing you always want to remember is that you don't have cookies that are quickly attacking you and quickly activating skills against you, so you have time to let your team work and not be overwhelmed so quickly. And so one of the best teams I've found has been this one, and here's why. Pure Vanilla provides the shields. That's always helpful, it's always going to be beneficial, and it's always going to be assisting every cookie you have. And there's very few rounds that you're going to come across in the story modes, both story and dark, that really can affect the shields too terribly much. Even with these debuffs, like the healing decrease and the shield decrease, they had to specifically put that there because Pure Vanilla in the earlier stories, the shields just do amazing. So at least for the first 13 episodes, Pure Vanilla is a automatic include if you have any investment into him, because he will just keep your team alive, especially with that healing. Parfait is a big deal for another reason, and this also plays into these debuffs in the bottom. Parfait gives debuff resistance as well as healing. Now the healing is a little bit subpar in comparison to some of the other support healers, but that debuff resistance and the other buffs that she gives to the team are really important. Now, I run her with a chocolate setup because I want her ability to activate as fast as possible so that we get the maximum amount of debuff resistance and the maximum amount of buffs on the team, so that way you can push through knowing that you have a secure safety net between the two rears of your team. Cotton, the last healing support, so you can see that basically 3 healers on the team is an important thing. But Cotton's healing support is tremendous as well. Definitely is on par level with Pure Vanilla as far as healing over time. If it's a speed battle, Pure Vanilla will do it faster, but over time, Cotton can keep up the pace. And the reason is because Cotton has a 7-second attack buff increase when the lantern is going. So the lantern, if you have attack speed on Cotton, then the lantern attack buff will actually be a shorter amount of time, where if you have no attack speed or slower attack speed on substats or regular stats, then the lantern will last longer, thus giving the 75% attack boost to your entire team for that duration. So that's an important thing to think about, because if you remember, attack speed guarantees changes your attack animation, and that's why it can affect how long that can be active. So keep that in mind with Cotton. So that attack boost is also increasing the healing that all 3 of them are doing. Pumpkin Pie is a huge deal because any healing that the enemy is doing is lowered by Pumpkin Pie. In addition, Pumpkin Pie puts a 6th body on the field. Having more bodies to fight the enemies is always going to be in your benefit. It helps with Licorice, it helps with Cotton, it helps with Pumpkin Pie. So additional bodies coming from them just gives you that much more assistance in fighting these battles. And Pumpkin Pie summons a huge pom-pom to defend you with her attack, HP, and defense factored in percentage-wise to what pom-pom is going to bring to the table. And because it's in the frontmost, it's going to act similar to what a defender would. Now last, of course, is Dark Cacao, and the reason is now Dark Cacao, since he has been released, he's got the permanent debuff that can't be dispelled, the healing reduction overall max in the battle, so if they even do have healing, it's lowered, and the ability to zap through any enemy shields, similar to what Twizzly does and what Affogato can do against a single unit. And so this is going to help clear away any painful enemies that might be able to shield, similar to Pure Vanilla, against your team. And between all of them, you're going to have a really powerful force, and I've seen them do really good for all the modes. The only one that they have a little trouble on is 11-27, and I can cover a team in another video for that, or just a few teams that I think work well. But this team is more just built for survival rather than quick power out. And so that is my recommendation as far as player versus environment battles. Now when it comes to, hi kitty, when it comes to the arena though, it's a bit different. There's a lot of different setups, and I'll try to cover at least the most important ones. So the top 5 that I know of that are at least used often, we're going to start with the, it's called Scam Team or Cheese Team. And so that would be Sea Fairy, and then Eclair, Almond Cookie, Ginger Brave, and Tiger Lily. Where's Tiger Lily? There's Tiger Lily, not Twizzly. And then Ginger Brave. Now the reason this is the comp for one of the cheese comps, with the scroll, the lollipop, and the scythe, is because Ginger Brave has a base cooldown of 8 seconds. And so the way that the cooldowns work is that it takes your toppings into consideration, not the Jelly Watch, not any other thing you have, at least as of current treasure meta. And it takes that 8 seconds, times it by the amount of topping cooldown that you have, and then subtracts that accordingly to give you the cooldown speed of the ability. And I do believe that you can get Ginger Brave down to 2.5 seconds at max cooldown, which is going to be faster than any other cookie in the game. And since it charges through, disperses the enemy, and gives that partial stun, that's going to be important for what Ginger Brave is accomplishing there, for your team to come in and do the rest. Tiger Lily provides a stun against the other team as well. And then because Almond goes ahead and skill links to the team, dividing out the damage equally, so that maybe you one-shot one cookie. Well, that damage isn't going to be wasted. It's going to be pushed towards other cookies. That's why Almond's so good in this comp. And of course, Eclair providing that weakness debuff. It is very similar to an attack buff on your team, but it is something that goes directly on the enemy team. If you do not one-shot their entire team, the combination between Tiger Lily and Ginger Brave stun, with Almond skill link dividing out the damage, and Eclair having the weakness debuff placed on, should give your team a shield long enough for Sea Fairy to just light up the remaining amount of damage, since the scythe and the lollipop should be either attaching to her or to Eclair. One of the two will be getting it, depending on how you have your cookies built. Now the counter for this team are going to be a few different things. The first being the branch. If you have the branch is an epic treasure, and it provides a shield to your team for a certain percentage, depending on its level. At my level 11, it gives 28.6% of their max HP for 7 seconds. So the higher the HP they have, the bigger the shield they have. And that matters against the scam team coming against you. It's only for 7 seconds, and once they've broken through the shield, it's gone. It takes 60 seconds to re-cool down, and so for that reason, you want it to count. But in a scam team, usually their first hit is all that counts. So this is why the branch is really powerful for that. The other treasure that is an option would be the Flamingo Tube. This I only recommend if you're running a defender team. If you're running some regular team, it's not going to be very effective. But if you're running a defender team, your 2 defenders are going to have almost a 50% HP buff at level 10. I would believe at level 12 it is 50%, but I would have to double check. And that will be enough to survive their initial attack, that you can at least give a counter attack from the 2 defenders. But that's a tough treasure to work with. You have to build a team specifically around it. The last one that I think works really well is the Gatekeeper's Ghost Horn. And this increases all the defense of all your cookies by 45% at level 12. Now, if you have low defense cookies that just have a base stat of defense that are low in the beginning, this will not work. So the horn buffs the defense, so the higher the defense, the more effective this treasure is going to be. If it has a low defense as a cookie, it's not going to utilize as strong enough to avoid the damage that's going to come from the scam team. But those are the 3 treasure counters that you can run in your teams to counter the scam team. And the 3 cookies I think best counter these teams are Hollyberry, Pumpkin Pie, and where was the last one? Tea-Night. So Hollyberry has the damage resistance and redirection. So if you have a fast enough cooldown, you can redirect some of the damage going from your cookies to Hollyberry. Pumpkin Pie skill is the fastest skill that happens in the game because of that initial cooldown, regardless of what toppings you have on Pumpkin Pie. So therefore you can bring out an enemy that even if your entire team gets wiped out, Pom Pom might be able to counterattack for the remaining health of their team for you to still win. So it just depends on how you have Pumpkin Pie set up. And then Tea-Night, of course, if you have Tea-Night at maximum damage resistance, HP, and defense, then if all the other cookies die, Tea-Night is going to get massive buffs and just solo speed run through their entire comp team. Now, to run it properly, if you do have Tea-Night, I would recommend Insignia. And that treasure actually can work for any of the other 2 as well, because whatever remaining cookie you have left will have at least a few seconds to try and counterattack and take the win. But those ones specifically are going to be able to benefit from that the best. Second team we're going to go through, and this is a team that has definitely proven to be difficult to fight against, but it is powerful, is going to be Strawberry Crepe, Eclair, Cotton, Sea Fairy, and Dark Cacao. Now you can alternate this. Instead of Sea Fairy, you can do Frost Queen. Both are going to be strong. And then the treasures here are Scroll, Monocle, and the Jelly Watch. And the reason this team is strong is because Strawberry Crepe, if you have chocolate toppings on her, she will be providing damage resistance of 50% to your entire team. So that is like having full solid almond toppings fully upgraded without any other substat on your entire team for 7 seconds. And that's important, especially if you can get it to go off multiple times, because it does stack. So that's why Strawberry Crepe is so important here. Now, and of course her attack is still decent too. The power that comes from Frost Queen and Sea Fairy is either the stun or the skill stopping from Frost Queen's ability. Both are going to do amazing things. The reason you can't really run both of them though is that Eclair, that debuff that goes on the enemy, and the shields that you can get from taking them out can be more helpful than 2 different stuns, and you can't stack the stuns together. So let's say Sea Fairy and Frost Queen both get their ability to go at the same time. They're not going to be stunned and frozen, taking that much longer to come back. They'll just be one or the other. And it usually is frozen over stun, so that just negates the ability coming from Sea Fairy to overall take over their team. Now, if you have their cooldowns spaced out properly enough, you might be able to get a stun and then get a freeze right after, or vice versa, because they're only about 2 seconds in between each other, that it might be beneficial. But that's a very specific build and pretty hard to achieve. So Eclair is going to be more beneficial than having both of those legendaries at the same time because of that shield and attack. Now the Monocle is important because most of the time you'll be running against other teams with Eclair. You want to be able to remove that debuff as quick as possible, not to mention that the Monocle provides healing to your team as well. And then Dark Cacao, of course, is going to lower their maximum healing potential so that you can actually have a chance to take them out even if they have good healing factors on their team. Now what I suggest is the counter to this team is either a really well built speed comp or a cheese comp. Cheese comps can take this team out very quickly, but you do have to run Frost Queen is in the cheese comp. So that initial cheese comp I showed you with Ginger Brave, Eclair, Tigery Lily, and Almond, you would want to replace Sea Fairy with Frost Queen in that cheese comp. to be able to pull it off against this team, because you need to stun down their highest attackers, which is going to usually be Frost Queen and Eclair, and get them removed off the board before they can really meddle with your team too much. And especially with Frost Queen slowing down their skills, that lowers their chances of damage resistance from Strawberry Crepe, and their attack buffs from Cotton and debuffs from Dark Cacao. So those are 3 important reasons why to run that. Now, if you do it with the speed comp I would recommend that should work should be this one. And now, this speed comp, why it runs good and why it's important is that Mint is actually really powerful at healing. And not only that, but the fact is that the speed that he provides is a huge buff to the entire team, to the point where Madeline can actually outdamage the entire team, even Dark Cacao. And so that speed increasing from all of them is really helpful in so many different ways. But the healing is actually even more powerful from Mint than it is from pure vanilla over time, because of that attack speed increase that's coming from both Mint and the robes. So both of those are supremely helpful, and this team can just push other teams extremely quickly as long as it's set up correctly. If you don't have the right toppings, if you don't have high enough treasures, you're probably not going to go ahead and be able to counter a team like this, especially if they have a high level monocle, but that is a good chance. So if you don't have that team well built, I would preferably suggest running a speed comp instead. And then the last 2 teams we'll cover that are at least currently meta, because there are more teams, but we'll just cover the meta ones today, the ones that you're going to see. We're going to cover the Summoner comp. So the Summoner comp, this one's still very powerful. It is able to mess with a lot of teams that I do, and it still provides a lot of problems for me in Arena with many of the different teams I have, but there is a counter against it. And so it is Pumpkin Pie, Eclair, Parfait, and Cotton, and Snow Sugar. And a really, really important thing is that Snow Sugar needs to be very high level and well built. Level 44 Snow Sugar is the only reason I can't run this team, because it's just not strong enough. So you need all of these at level 60 with a high level pin cushion for this to be functional. If you don't have those, I would probably recommend steering away from this team, because it is a very specific setup, but once you have it correct, it runs strong. Now you notice there's no defender, there's no lead that's going to protect your team, but that's because the bodies that come from Pumpkin Pie and Cotton and Snow Sugar, and the debuff resistance and the debuff sent by Eclair from that whole side, it lights up the field with power, and it's very strong. The thing that it is not good against, though, is the scam team, specifically the Kumio scam team. And if there is 2 defenders, one specifically being Coco, because Coco prevents stun and gives the stun immunity for a small amount of time, and that's the main benefactor coming from this team, is the stun provided by Snow Sugar and the small stun that comes from the sheep from Cotton. And so this is a pretty good team too, but it is good against regular double tank teams and some other speed comp teams, but it just depends on the treasure levels too, because you have to remember you're not going to always run into a higher level team with higher treasures and have a really good chance of this. If you want to run that, you're going to probably have to run the scam team, because that's the only one that can push higher levels since it's such a fast hitting team. But then the last team, one that's really been making a lot of voice in the meta, is the T-Knight team, and that is T-Knight, Eclair, Frost Queen, Sea Fairy, and Dark Cacao. And then the treasures are the the scroll, the insignia, and the feather. And so here's the reason. If you have T-Knight at the largest amount of damage resistance and health and everything he can have, and you have the others more focused on just pure attack, you're going to get a lot of damage from your side of the team to start. They're going to get knocked out by your opposing teams in most cases, and T-Knight's going to survive. Then he's going to gain all of the buffs from them dying, while all of the debuffs from Dark Cacao and Eclair have been placed on the enemy team, to the point where T-Knight will just steamroll through them. There's very few cases that I've seen that this team does not work against most teams, so we haven't found a full true counter yet. The only one that sets up decently against these kind of teams is a very tanky sorbet kind of team. So a counter for this, at least if you were to try and make a counter, would be a triple tank with sorbet and probably a good healer. So I would say Cotton, Madeline, Strawberry Crepe, and Sorbet, because Madeline has that immunity to all damage for the 7 seconds while having great speed in damage output. And then running the Feather, Scroll, and Jelly Watch so that you can get those abilities to fire off as quick as possible. That would be my recommendation as a counter to the Teammate team. If it's the same level, if it's a higher level, just walk away. You're not going to have much of a chance against it, sadly. But let me know if there's any meta teams that you guys have come across, anything that you see that you think should be discussed, or maybe specific counters you come across that you think are really powerful and just not discussed enough. I'd love to hear them in the comments of the YouTube video. Anything that you guys want to add, or any likes that you want to place to help the channel, always appreciated too. And other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you.